For years, the Morgue of Paris occupied a particular place in the heart of Parisians and people visiting the capital. It is difficult to imagine that a place where cadavers are exposed could become one of the most visited attractions, with sometimes 40,000 visitors a day and long queues spreading outside the front of the building. Let's take a look at the history of this institution to understand its appeal. Firstly, what does morgue mean? It comes from the Old French word morgue or morgue, meaning attitude. Slowly, the meaning transformed into treat someone with contempt. To people in the 17th century, it meant an examination room where prisoners are held and where the warden could examine them for the purpose of recognising them in case they escaped. Slowly, the word evolved to convey a place where bodies are exposed. During the Middle Ages in Paris, bodies found in the streets or in the River Seine were transferred to the Hospital St. Catherine to be buried in the Cemetery of the Innocents by the nuns. They then kept the clothing of a deceased as collateral to pay for the burial. In the 18th century, unidentified bodies were sent to the prison of Châtelet to be displayed to the public. The cadavers were laid out in cells, and an opening in the door allowed visitors to examine the body. In 1804, the morgue was moved to the Ile de la Cité, City Island. The new building looked like a Greek mausoleum. The location meant that the morgue is now positioned near very busy streets. It was now visible to everyone and closer to the police headquarters as well as the medical faculty. It's not possible to ignore it. The Morgue of Paris sees its peak of activity during the social unrest on the 5th and 6th of June 1832. At this time, 78 unidentified bodies are exposed, while families are looking frantically for their missing loved ones. In 1837, the morgue received 22 people killed during a stampede during the celebration of the wedding of the Duke of Orleans. However, the large building slowly decayed due to overuse and was regularly in danger when the River Seine flooded. The building was eventually demolished in 1864. The morgue was then moved to another location on the island, and in 1868, a new building looking like a Greek temple opened its doors. It contained an ice room to expose the bodies for 3 days, like a kind of primitive refrigerator. The room is separated by windows. It contains other rooms for autopsies and teaching. In 1880, a complete refrigerating system was installed. The bodies on the slabs are sprinkled with water and chemicals from a faucet above them. Throughout its history, the Morgue of Paris keeps attracting crowds who are fascinated and excited, especially if mystery surrounds one of the bodies on display. For example, in August 1889, 2 bodies are exposed. One is a murdered young girl. The other is the beheaded cadaver of a young woman. The crowd pressed at the doors of the morgue, shouting wildly. Fallen hats are crushed, umbrellas are broken, and a few women faint because they have been squashed. To manage the crowds, only small groups are now allowed inside. The front of the morgue offers a spectacle seen miles away, portraying the dismal purpose of the building. There are peddlers and fruit sellers offering their wares to the waiting crowd. Children play in front of the building and the public garden nearby. In the summertime, people stay, leaning on the iron guard protecting the ice room's window, and they stand there for hours on end. It's not for the show inside, but rather for the shade and the cold air that is being circulated, and so welcome during a hot French summer day. The Morgue of Paris occupied a special place for writers like Émile Zola or Wilkie Collins in The Woman in White, where Walter Hartwright visits the morgue and finds the body of Fosco lying there. Finally, in 1907, Prefect Lapine closed the morgue to the public. At that time, people needed authorization to access the building, stating their purpose. Then, 16 years later, in 1923, the morgue changed its name, becoming Institut Médico-Legal, and moved its location to Quai de la Rapée. Although the buildings may have disappeared from their intended use, and people might have forgotten the sorrowful displays of unidentified human cadavers, the Morgue of Paris is immortalised in fiction and historical papers. It is linked to many true crimes, both solved and unsolved, and was a temporary resting place for thousands of lost souls.